In this section of the course, I will describe the concepts behind building optimized e-commerce website architectures. Having a great site architecture means making products and categories findable on your website in a way that users and search engines can reach them as easily as possible. Keep in mind that I will abbreviate site architecture as SA. There are two concepts you should be aware of regarding site architecture. The first one is efficient crawling and indexing. This is referred to as the technical architecture or TA. The second one is classifying, labeling, and organizing content. This is referred to as information architecture or IA. A good understanding of these two concepts will help you build search engine optimized websites that are search engine and user friendly. To avoid confusion, it's important to differentiate between information and technical architecture. Information architecture is the process of classifying and organizing content on a website while providing user-friendly access to that content via navigation. This is done by information architects. Technical architecture is the process of designing the technical and functional aspects of a website. This is mostly done by web developers. Together, information and technical architecture form the site architecture. Keep in mind that SEO involves both information and technical architecture knowledge. The Information Architecture Institute's definition of IA is the structural design of shared information environments, the art and science of organizing and labeling websites, intranets, online communities, and software to support usability and findability. An emerging community of practice focused on bringing principles of design and architecture to the digital landscape. This definition shows that information architecture goes beyond websites, and it hints at its complexity. It also reveals how flexible and theoretical information architecture is. From an e-commerce standpoint, let's oversimplify the definition of information architecture to this single sentence: the classification and organization of content and online inventory. You should be familiar with two other important information architecture concepts: taxonomy and ontology. While these names might be intimidating, the concepts are actually pretty easy to understand. Taxonomy is the classification of topics into a hierarchical structure. For e-commerce, this translates into assigning items to one or more categories. E-commerce taxonomies are usually vertical, tree-like structures. A website taxonomy is often referred to as its hierarchy. To visualize a taxonomy, think of breadcrumbs. In these screenshots, you notice how breadcrumbs can mimic the website taxonomy. In our examples, one branch of the tree leads to duvet and comforter covers, and the other to aloe vera gels. The structures depicted in these two screen caps are ordered using a parent-child relationship from broader to narrower topics, and they are called taxonomies. One way to create e-commerce taxonomies is to use a controlled vocabulary, which is a restricted list of terms, names, labels, and categories. Usually, it's the information architects who develop these vocabularies. In terms of SEO, you should use semantic markup to help search engines understand taxonomies. One such markup can be applied to your site breadcrumbs. Microdata or RDFA markup are used by search engines to generate breadcrumb-rich snippets similar to this one. As you can see in the screenshot, search engines can sometimes display the website taxonomy directly in the search results pages, which are also known as SERPs. We will discuss breadcrumbs in detail later in this course, but briefly, this is how the source code for the previous rich snippet example looks like. The highlighted text shows the breadcrumb vocabulary markup. The second information architecture concept you need to be aware of is ontology. Ontology means the relationships between taxonomies. If an e-commerce hierarchy can be visualized as an inverted tree with the homepage at the top, then an ontology is the forest showing relationships between trees. An ontology might encompass various taxonomies, with each taxonomy organizing topics into a particular hierarchy. Simply put, an ontology is a more complex type of taxonomy containing richer information about the content and the items on a website. We are just at the beginning of building ontology-driven websites, and one common ontology vocabulary for e-commerce is good relations. The semantic web is aimed at helping artificial intelligence agents such as search engine robots crawl through and categorize information more effectively. It is also aimed at helping identifying relationships between items and categories. Related categories or related products can be considered a form of ontology. If you're not an information architect or a business analyst, you probably won't be too involved into identifying related categories and products, but it's important to know these terms in your discussions with information architects. Sometimes, related categories and products are automatically identified by the e-commerce platform or by specialized software. Why is information architecture important for search engines? A correctly designed information architecture will result in a tiered website architecture, which has an internal linking structure that will allow child pages, which are pages that can link upwards in the hierarchy, to support the more important parent pages, which are upper-level pages that link down in the vertical hierarchy, such as category and subcategory pages. Pages that link to each other at the same level of the hierarchy are called siblings. They share the same parent. Let's take a look at this simplified information architecture example. With correct internal linking, a blog article, for example, Top 5 New Features of Canon Rebel T5i DSLR, will support the product detail page Canon Rebel T5i DSLR. This page will support the category page Digital Cameras, which will further support the top-level category Electronics. One of the questions that often comes up when deciding on the hierarchy is, what's the best number of levels to reach a product detail page? The famous 3-click rule, which suggests that every page on a website should take no more than 3 clicks to access, is okay to use as a guide, but don't get stuck to it. If you need a 4th level in the hierarchy, that's perfectly fine. Information architects, business analysts, or merchandising teams can help identify relationships between categories, subcategories, and products. Based on these findings, you will decide on rules for an internal linking strategy. Such rules can include: only highly related categories will interlink. Categories will link only to their parents. Subcategories will link only to related subcategories or categories. Product pages will only link to related products in the same category and to parent categories. A proper website architecture will help your website rank for the so-called head terms. For e-commerce websites, these are usually the category and subcategory pages. However, internal linking is not enough for a subcategory page to reach the top of search engine results pages for category-related search queries. Because head terms are usually pretty competitive, a page targeting such terms should also include relevant and useful content. This means that your listing pages should display more than just a list of items. For product detail pages, you need to present more than just product pictures and pricing. The page should also have backlinks from related, trusted external websites. Additionally, proper information architecture means good usability. Great usability and content create an excellent user experience, which then leads to an increased dwell time, which is good for SEO. Dwell time is the amount of time that a searcher spends on a page before returning to the SERPs. The longer this time, the better. Pogo sticking means going back and forth between a SERP and the web pages listed in the results. For example, you search for something, click on the first result, you are not happy with the result, and then you go back to the SERP. Then you click on the second result, you are still not happy, and you go back to the SERP again, and so on and so forth, until you find what you are looking for, or until you refine your search query. A SERP bounce happens when a search engine user clicks on your page in the SERPs, then goes back to the results without interacting with any page elements. Note that a high SERP bounce is not inherently bad for SEO, but a low dwell time might be. An increased dwell time sends quality signals because it hints to search engines that your page is relevant for a particular search query. Navigation, such as primary, secondary, breadcrumbs, or contextual navigation, is also one of the critical components of website architecture. Navigation is jointly crafted by various members of the business, led by the information architect. Given that the primary navigation will be present on almost every page of the website, it influences how authority and link signals are passed to other pages. Fortunately for everyone involved with e-commerce marketing, there are ways to give users what they want and, at the same time, guide search engine bots towards what you want them to discover, crawl, and index. Let's talk about how SEO can add value to information architecture. Remember, information architecture is not about technical issues, but it's about organizing digital inventory. So while SEO has an important role to play with information architecture, it should not dictate how information is labeled and organized. Information architecture is about making content easy to find and helpful for users. However, because most SEOs are biased towards marketing and technology rather than user experience and usability, it's advisable to involve both an information architect and an SEO consultant when working out the information architecture. Try to involve the SEO person from the early stages of the information architecture process to provide suggestions and feedback from a search engine standpoint and to contribute to the overall site architecture discussion. Once the information architect designing the draft information architecture listens to what the SEO has to say, he or she can brainstorm with the other teams involved about how to implement the SEO recommendations with minimal changes to the initial information architecture format. Many times, technology and marketing teams will dismiss a certain information architecture simply because it doesn't have traffic potential. Don't make that mistake. When optimizing for search engines and their users, you should listen to what other teams in the business have to say and only then suggest solutions. As mentioned, the SEO's role is to provide consultancy from the perspective of search engines. Let's take a look at a few areas where SEO input is valuable. The concept of flat architecture. In a flat architecture, deep pages, which are pages at the lower levels of the website hierarchy, and those are usually the product detail pages, so deep pages are accessible to users and search engine bots within a balanced number of clicks for users or hops for bots. This figure depicts what flat architecture looks like. The opposite of flat architecture is the so-called deep architecture, and it may look like this. In a deep architecture model, pages are mostly linked in a vertical structure. Let's use math to illustrate the concept behind flat architecture. At level 0, which is the home page, you link to 100 category pages. From each page at level 1, which are the category pages, you link to 100 subcategory pages. At this level, you can link to 10,000 subcategory URLs. From each page at level 2, which are the subcategory pages, you link to 100 product pages. From this level, you can link to 1 million product URLs. So in 3 hops, search engines can reach, crawl, and eventually index 1 million pages. Please note that the 100 links per page example was used as a guide only. In practice, you can have more or less links depending on your site authority. Let's look at the scenario of a direct visit to your homepage. To reach a product detail page from the homepage, a user will have to perform the following actions. The first, click on the Cosmetics category page. The second, click on the I subcategory page. The third, click on a product details page. If no external links point directly to that product details page, search engines will find its URL in a similar way to users. The bot will crawl from an entry page and will, eventually, find its way to the product detail page. Keep in mind that search engines will enter your website through a multitude of URLs, not only through the homepage. In our scenario, it took only 3 clicks to reach a product page, but if the website is structured on a deep information architecture, it might take users and search engines more clicks or hops. But how and why did we adopt flat architecture? The concept of flat website architecture seems to have its roots in web design, and it started with the 3-click rule becoming a best practice around the year 2000. However, when usability experts tested this rule, they found that it wasn't necessarily working for users as expected. As a matter of fact, users' ability to find products on an e-commerce website increased by 600% after the design was changed so that products were 4 clicks from the homepage instead of 3. Then smart SEOs jumped in thinking that if the rule was good for users, then it should be good for search engines as well. SEOs just found a way to funnel more PageRank to deeper levels and optimize crawling by providing shorter paths for search engines. However, the initial goal was actually to avoid pages ending up in the supplemental index because of their low PageRank, and it wasn't to flatten the site architecture. Here are a few important pointers about flat architecture. Unless you sell a limited number of products, or unless you have a very limited number of pages on the website, don't flatten to the extreme. That means don't link from the homepage to hundreds of product detail pages just to build a flat architecture. Flat architecture is about the distance between pages in terms of clicks or hops, not about the number of directories in the URL. For example, you can link from the homepage directly to a subcategory URL at the 4th level of the hierarchy to promote a subcategory that generates high profits. In this example, the recliners page is only 1 click away from the homepage, which fits the flat architecture concept, but it is 4 levels down in the directory hierarchy, which matches the deep architecture concept. As long as directories don't generate super long URLs, they have advantages such as facilitating easier website theming, presenting users with a clear delineation of the categories on your website, and allowing for easier SEO, information architecture, and web analysis. Also, Google and other search engines may use your directory structure to create rich snippet breadcrumbs. In this screenshot, you can see how Google displays breadcrumbs directly in SERPs. However, such rich snippets will show up only if the directory hierarchy is structured or if you mark up your breadcrumbs with schema vocabulary. It's not mandatory for URLs to replicate the exact website taxonomy, and here's an example. On hotel reservations websites, it's common to have a taxonomy based on hotel geolocations. The taxonomy of the website is Home, Europe, France, Ile-de-France, Paris. The corresponding URL for this taxonomy is domain.com/Europe/France/Ile-de-France/Paris. Even though the URL reflects the hierarchical taxonomy, it's too long and too difficult to type in or to remember. If the website sells only hotel rooms, the alternative URL might look like this: domain.com/France/Paris. If the website offers other travel services such as air tickets or car rentals, then the alternative URL will include the type of service, and it might look like this: domain.com/car-rentals/France/Paris. Regarding the directory structure for hotel booking websites, it's worth noting that hotels are a special e-commerce case. That's because you cannot recategorize hotels from one city to another. To avoid issues associated with moving products from one category to another, or issues related to polyhierarchies, which means items being categorized in multiple categories, keep the PDP URLs free of categories whenever possible. For example, to reach the product page 3-level carousel media center, a user will navigate through the home page, which is mysite.com, the category page, which is mysite.com/office furniture, the subcategory page, which is mysite.com/office furniture/storage, the subcategory page, which is mysite.com/office furniture/storage/media storage. But once the searcher reaches the product detail page, the URL is free of categories and subcategories. Setting product names in stone is also a good idea. The product page URL is free of categories, subcategories, or subsubs. The category and subcategory URLs include the trailing / at the very end. This hints to search engines that the URLs are directories and there is more content to be found on those pages. The product page has a .html file extension, which hints to search engines that this is an item page and not a directory. The file extension can be anything, for example .php or .aspx, because the file extension doesn't matter at all to search engines. In this image, you can see how Google treats trailing slashes on different protocols and host names. Removing categories and subcategories from URLs is a trade-off with your data analysis, as it will make the web analysis a little bit more challenging. However, this difficulty is surmountable. For example, you can group pages in your analytics tool, or you can mark up the HTML code with different strings to group pages based on your own rules. At the same time, make sure your web analytics tool is set up to easily group pages for analysis. Without unique identifiers for URLs, it's more difficult to segment the data. Flat website architecture is closely tied to another important SEO topic, siloing. In the simplest terms, siloing means creating a site architecture that allows users to find information in a structured manner while linking pages using a controlled pattern to guide how search engine bots crawl the website. Usually, this structure is a vertical taxonomy. Siloing sounds like a fancy term, but in reality, it's just good information architecture, because siloing is one part website hierarchy and one part navigation using internal linking. At a very basic level, siloing means that product pages should not link to subcategory pages from other silos, as you can see in this image. In practice, a strict hierarchy pattern like the one in this diagram, where child pages are only linked to and from their respective parent pages, is not possible without a strictly controlled internal linking. It is very difficult to create such a strict internal linking pattern, mainly because primary navigation is present on all pages, so cross-linking will happen naturally. It is also difficult because of polyhierarchies, which means multiple categorization for products or subcategories. For example, the office furniture category can be categorized under office products and under furniture. Also, on e-commerce websites, there's a need for subcategory cross-linking and crossover products. For instance, you may have to link from a product that is categorized under home theater to another product made by the same brand, but categorized under audio. Because e-commerce websites are complex, they are most likely to have a hierarchy with frequently interlinking between silos. In practice, it's very difficult and sometimes not even advisable to prevent interlinking between silos. The internal linking architecture can be very complex and difficult to control, even for e-commerce websites with just a few hundred products, as you can see in this graph. This node graph shows how complex internal linking can be. In this example, a website with just a few thousand pages generated more than 250,000 internal links. Conceptually, siloing is done by identifying the main themes of the website and then interlinking only pages belonging to the same silo. The good part is that e-commerce websites are usually developed using a similar architecture with separate hierarchies for each department or category. The idea is that by siloing the website into themes, you will be able to rank high for semantically unrelated keywords with the same website, even though the themes are totally different. For example, hard drives and red wines. You can achieve silos with directories or with internal linking. You can create hierarchies using user research and testing, which is done by information architects, with the help of keyword research, and by analyzing your web traffic. Your silos will be the directories in the URLs. Whenever possible, use a hierarchy created with directories. With internal linking, you can create virtual silos, as pages in the same silo don't need to be placed under the same directory. You achieve virtual silos by controlling internal links in such a way that search engine bots will only find links to pages in the same silo. This is a very similar concept to bot herding or PageRank sculpting, with subtle differences in meaning and application. Siloing with directories. This is the easiest to implement on new websites during the information architecture process. From a user experience perspective, creating the website hierarchy with directories is the best way to go. In the end, siloing with directories is actually creating good vertical hierarchies, which the URLs reflect. Many online retailers create them naturally by branching out all categories without thinking too much about SEO and without being obsessed with keywords in the anchor text or with internal linking patterns. A sample silo with directories would look like this. Does this type of siloing look familiar to you? It should if you use directories in your URLs. And this is actually nothing more than good hierarchy. So if you design your website hierarchy properly, you don't even need to worry about siloing with other methods. Keep in mind though that it is best practice to keep the directory depth low, ideally fewer than 4 or 5 levels. Siloing with internal linking. Siloing with directories may not always be possible. For example, if you wish to change an existing hierarchy on an established website. In this case, you can create virtual silos using carefully controlled internal linking. Usually, pages in a silo need to pass authority and relevance only to other pages within the same silo. This prevents the dilution of the silos theme and sends the maximum power to the main silo pages. Here are some rules for linking within and between silos. A page in a silo should link to parents. It can link to siblings if appropriate. Siblings are pages at the same level in the hierarchy. It should not link to cousins. It could eventually link to uncles or aunties. Uncles and aunties are siblings of the node's parent. In this simplified example, sibling number 1 could eventually link to uncles, which are siblings of that node's parent. This means that if you have to link two related supporting pages found in separate silos, which are called cousins, you should link only to the silo's uncles. If you need to link to pages outside the silo, you can block those links from being accessible to search engines. Note, however, that there is a fine line between white hat and gray hat SEO, and such linking may cross that line. This is because Google's definition of manipulative techniques is generated in the answer to the question, would you do it if search engines didn't exist? The goal is not to take siloing to the extreme. If a page is relevant and you want to link to it, then do so even if it's in a different silo or theme. Siloing with internal links is a powerful advanced SEO technique, especially for large websites with multiple departments that are not semantically related. But it's important to know that siloing is not easily achieved, and it pays to be aware of the existing dangers. If you want to silo with internal linking, know that PageRank sculpting with rel nofollow is not recommended. Virtual siloing means you somehow have to hide internal links from search engine bots, and doing so may fall outside search engine guidelines. Hiding internal links from search engines using iframes, Ajax, JavaScript, or other similar technique can qualify as cloaking, since you show different content to users than to search engines. This could result in penalties. If you want to obfuscate links with Ajax or JavaScript or any other technique for SEO reasons, first identify the percentage of users with JavaScript turned off. If that's a significant segment of your total visitors, make sure your website works properly without JavaScript. Non-JavaScript users should be able to finish all micro and macro conversions on your website. An example of micro conversion will be an add to cart event, while a macro conversion is a completed order. Remember, trading away too much for SEO at the expense of usability and accessibility is not the right way to go. Siloing may require hiding entire navigation elements, such as facets or filters, from search engines. In this image, you can see how only the top-level categories and the immediate next hierarchy level of subcategories pass authority through links. All the categories marked with a red border are nofollow links. This is a very bold and most likely bad SEO approach to handling primary navigation menus. Proper internal cross-linking is helpful and necessary for good rankings, and we will discuss this in detail in the internal linking section. But remember that internal linking has to be built for users first, and only then for search engines. You have to link consistently, thematically, and wisely to support rankings for categories and subcategories. You should not ask information architects to remove navigation elements just for SEO purposes. Keep the links that are useful for users in the interface, and if you want to remove links for SEO reasons, then do it by blocking those links with Ajax or JavaScript. Another theming method is to evolve taxonomies into ontologies. Instead of linking based strictly on a vertical taxonomy, interlink items that are conceptually related. For example, you can interlink a particular fragrance with the sunglasses manufactured by the same brand. This type of interlinking requires defining semantic and conceptual relationships between categories and items, and then deciding on the interlinking based on predefined business rules. One such business rule is crowdsourced recommendations, which are the sections on websites known as customers who bought this item also bought. Do users often buy certain products together? If yes, then cross-link those product detail pages even if they are in different silos. If this type of linkage generates too many internal links on some pages, you can always block the less important links. But for the sake of users, interlink whenever is necessary without being too concerned about siloing. If the business rules are based on data, then you won't be linking from adult toys to children's books. Also, you won't link to hundreds of related products, but just to a few highly related items. Here's what Google has to say about the subject of theming an internal architecture in a post on their official blog. Let's say my website is about my favorite hobbies, biking and camping. Should I keep my internal linking architecture themed and not cross-link between the two? Answer: we haven't found a case where a webmaster would benefit by intentionally theming their linking architecture for search engines. And keep in mind, if a visitor to one part of your website can't easily reach other parts of your website, that may be a problem for search engines as well. This is a reminder not to take siloing to extreme. However, siloing with directories is natural, and the resulting internal linking is also great for users and search engine bots. However, I lean towards a hybrid siloing concept combining the following: good website hierarchy reinforced by directory structure, rule-based internal linking, and a reduced number of links available to search engines, which can be done with or without Ajax or JavaScript, depending on the case. We'll discuss this subject later in the course. It's widely known that keyword research can help with generating content ideas. Keyword research also enables you to expand from a relatively narrow set of keywords to a large number of long-tail keywords. These long-tail keywords can then be used to generate content ideas or to identify product attributes or features and to improve product descriptions. Based on the initial taxonomy that the information architect creates, you can identify keyword patterns, tag user intent, group keywords according to buying stages, and find search volumes. This type of research provides great insights that are usually overlooked by the other teams in an e-commerce business. If you want to consistently publish content that your target market will find relevant, you'll have to know not only the queries used by searchers, but more importantly, the type of content they are looking for. Are they looking for general information about your products? If so, you would do well to put more emphasis on review-type content and how-to articles. Are they searching for products to buy? If so, you could improve the content on a particular product detail page. You can better address your target market needs once you gained an understanding of what they really want by discovering the user intent behind the search query. When you do so, you'll be better able to address their needs on your landing pages. And when your landing pages address people's needs, conversion rates will skyrocket. Here are some interesting facts about search queries. 80% of the web queries are informational in nature, while about 10% are navigational and another 10% transactional. You can't afford to ignore the long tail of organic search. It can amount to 70 to 80% of the total traffic. The earlier in the buying stage you reach a potential customer, the higher the chances of closing the sale at a later date. This is true for both B2B and B2C. In this image, you can see the search demand curve as defined by Moz. Notice how the long tail of keywords and chunky middle make for more than 80% of the keywords. Why did I mention these search query facts? It's because the correct way to start keyword research and to build a great website architecture is by recognizing that only a small fraction of your target market is ready to buy at any given moment. A lot of e-commerce websites mistakenly focus on targeting keywords such as department, category, or subcategory names, while completely ignoring the large amount of informational search queries. We'll detail a better keyword research process in the keyword research section of the course. Let's look again at the common e-commerce website architecture. Under this sample hierarchy, product detail pages are not supported by any other content-heavy level below the product level. Including the home page, there are 4 levels in this example. The first level is the home page, which is supported by categories, subcategories, and product detail pages. The category level is supported by the subcategory and product detail pages. The subcategory pages are then supported by product detail pages. However, product pages are the leaves in this example, which means they are the last level of the hierarchy. When an e-commerce website doesn't support product detail pages with an additional level in the hierarchy, it can miss a considerable amount of organic traffic coming from informational search queries. It will also miss out on the ability to create useful contextual links to product, subcategory, and category pages. In our example, you can overcome these challenges by creating a 5th level in the hierarchy, which can be a blog, a learning center, or a projects section on the website, to name just a few ideas. On Victoria's Secret website, I wasn't able to find a single reference to their blog. That's bad for them, but it's good news for the small guys competing in their niche. As you can see in this screenshot, only 5 pages on their website contain the word blog, and none of them were actually part of a real blog. Here are some ideas for you. Add a new layer of support for all pages on the website, especially for product and subcategory pages. As I mentioned, this layer can be a blog, a forum, expert Q&As, how-to guides, buying guides, white papers, workshops, and so on. This will generate additional organic traffic and will provide support for contextual internal linking. Additionally, it may help building a community around your brand, which is always a great thing to do. Conduct keyword research with this new level in mind, which means you won't dismiss informational keywords. Categorize such keywords into the informational bucket in your spreadsheets and plan content based on them. Let's say you sell home improvement items and you want more people to come to your website to buy them. Why not create a series of do-it-yourself home improvement projects and publish them on your blog or on a dedicated projects page? Take a look at this inspiring piece of content from Home Depot's blog. Home Depot is not at all into selling instructional do-it-yourself DVDs, but they are attracting the target market with highly related content. In this screenshot, you can notice how this page supports category and product pages by linking to them. When you add a new content-rich layer in the hierarchy, you add a new way to generate traffic, you give visitors more reasons to buy from you, and you reinforce product and category pages with better internal linking. Now, let's see how you could help in regards to information architecture. SEO can help with evaluating information architect's input. Planning an e-commerce architecture starts with information architects identifying the navigation labels such as departments, categories, or subcategory labels. In many cases, information architects don't associate this process with the keyword research process, which is good, because navigation has to serve the users, not the bots. However, you should evaluate the architect's input from a search engine perspective. Here's an example of how to do that using Google Trends. If the information architect wants to label one of the categories in the primary navigation as MP3 players, the search trend comparison data might change his or her mind. Notice in this screenshot how the trend for iPod is downwards, but it's still a few times more than the one for MP3 player. Indeed, iPod can be a child of the MP3 player parent, but you should brainstorm with the others in the team to decide whether making the iPod category easier to find would be more beneficial for users, which may mean displaying it directly in the primary navigation. Many times, the search volume for a parent category is higher than the search volume for a child category, but as you can see in this example, this rule is not definitive. Also, note that Google Trends displays normalized data on a scale of 1 to 100, where 100 is the highest search volume ever recorded. Google Trends doesn't display absolute search volumes. All e-commerce websites will have a primary navigation, which is also known as global navigation or main navigation, will have a secondary navigation, which is also known as local navigation, and will have some contextual navigation. Another form of navigation specific to complex websites is faceted navigation. Let's talk about primary and secondary navigation. Primary navigation is for the content that most users are interested, but keep in mind that importance is relative. Something important for your business may not be as important for another business. In general, on e-commerce websites, primary navigation displays departments, categories, or market segments, such as men, women, kids, and so on. Primary navigation is the easiest type for most users to identify. It allows direct access to the website's hierarchy and is present on almost every page of a website. This image shows a sample primary navigation on Kohl's website. As a side note, it will be difficult for Kohl's to rank for top-level category keywords such as home, bed and bath, furniture, outerwear, and so on, since they will have to compete with niche-specific websites that are laser-focused on one particular segment. Strongly connected with navigational links is an SEO best practice that recommends keeping the number of links on a page below 100. However, this is an obsolete rule. You can list more than 100 links on your pages, depending on the authority of your website. You will see high-authority websites like Walmart listing hundreds of internal and external links. In this image, you can notice that there are 633 links on this page. This may be too many links unless you have an excellent site authority. Walmart's large number of links results from the use of the so-called flyout mega menus in the primary navigation for usability reasons. This type of menus makes deeper sections of the website easily accessible to users. Mega menus allow direct linking to subcategories and even to products, but you have to be careful to keep that number to a reasonable limit. Since the primary navigation is present on the majority of the pages on a website, it can have a pretty big influence on how authority moves back and forth between pages. Consolidating a long list of departments into a single resource probably has to do with design considerations and user experience. But it also has an effect on the PageRank path to the other pages. In this screenshot, you can see how design limitations forced Walmart to reduce the number of links in their navigation. Notice the See All Departments link at the bottom of the primary navigation. However, Walmart has a separate page for the complete list of their departments and categories. The All Departments consolidation is a good idea because this page will act as a sitemap for both people and search engine bots. You can help the information architects decide which categories are the most important for users and therefore should be listed in the primary navigation. Use web analytics tools to identify metrics such as the most searched terms on the website, the most viewed pages, or the highest pay-per-click traffic keywords. In this screenshot from Google Analytics, the keyword with the highest number of internal searches could eventually be placed in the navigation if it makes sense, or it can be placed near the search field. Now let's talk about contextual navigation. Contextual navigation refers to the navigation present within the main section of web pages. It excludes boilerplate navigation items such as those found in headers or in footers. Some examples of contextual navigation on e-commerce websites include sections such as customers who viewed this item also viewed, or bestsellers, or text links such as the links in this brief category description, or links in the recommended products carousels. You will need to discuss contextual navigation with the information architect to identify relevant relationships between categories, subcategories, and products, and to plan the internal linking accordingly. SEO can help with the prioritization of labels in the navigation. It's good to know how many pages will be linked from structural sections of the website on each page template. This is important to estimate because you need to determine how many links you can display in the contextual navigation. If you have a new website, it's a good idea to keep the number of links on each page to a maximum 200. This is because you will have only a small authority to pass along to lower levels in the beginning. Here are some prioritization guidelines. Keep the number of top-level categories or departments in the primary navigation low to avoid the paradox of choice. Research has established that having too many choices is bad for decision-making. The short-term memory rule of 7 items doesn't apply to primary navigation, as users don't need to remember the labels in the menu. You can list more categories on a View All Departments or View All Categories page. As you can see in these examples, in a horizontal design, the primary navigation is constrained by design space. Notice how short the category names must be. Macy's displays 11 labels in the primary navigation, while Office Depot lists only 9 labels. However, vertical primary navigation placement allows for more categories to be listed. Costco displays 18 categories in the menu, Sears the same number, while Walmart displays only 13. Specialty retailers will probably have no more than 2 or 3 departments, in which case they may not even list departments in the menu, but rather categories. General department stores can have up to 20 departments. You can break each category level into 20 to 40 subcategories, depending on how large your inventory is. If a parent category needs more than 40 subcategories, you may want to consider adding a new parent category or implementing faceted subcategories. Ideally, the hierarchy depth to reach a product detail page should be under 4 levels. 2 levels deep are Home, Category, Product Detail page. 3 levels deep are Home, Category, Subcategory, Product Detail page. 4 levels deep are Home, Department, Category, Subcategory, Product Detail page, or Home, Category, Subcategory, Subcategory, and Product page. If the hierarchy has more than 4 or 5 levels, consider using faceted navigation to allow filtering by product attributes. To improve the authority and the relevance of product detail pages, add a content layer in the hierarchy just below the product detail page level and link to relevant items from there. Ordering categories or items alphabetically is not always the best option. You should prioritize based on popularity and logic whenever possible, and eventually complement with alpha navigation if user testing proves that such type of navigation is indeed useful. This is a screenshot from an older version of primary navigation on Office Macs featuring alpha navigation. And this is a newer screenshot after Office Macs tested the alpha navigation and reverted to the category name navigation. If a category has too few items, consider moving them to an existing category with more items, but do this only if the new categorization makes sense for users. If a category has too many items, it may generate information overload. In this case, you can break the category into smaller subcategories or create a user experience that allows better scope selection before displaying a list of items. Let's discuss a bit about handling keyword variations. Planning a categorized product hierarchy is not easy. At the top category level, the labels in the primary navigation must be intuitive, must have the appropriate search volumes, and must be concise enough to support menu-based navigation. It's worth repeating that determining the hierarchy of an e-commerce website solely based on keyword research is neither ideal nor recommended. However, keyword research should complement and support information architecture. One common question regarding keywords is how to handle misspellings, synonyms, stemming, or keyword variations for a category. Where do you place them in the website information architecture? For your own internal site search, this should be easy to handle. You have to associate each keyword variation, misspelling, and so on to an existing product or category and redirect users to the respective canonical product or category page when they perform a search on your website. If there is no exact match between the keyword variation, misspelling, or synonym and a category on your website, then send them to an internal site search results page. For example, when someone searches for tees, t-shirts, or t-shirts in one word, you return results for t-shirts. If there's an exact match between the search query and the category name, you can also redirect the searcher to the t-shirts category listing page. In this screenshot, I wanted to highlight an improper handling of internal site search results. Make sure that your internal site search works properly and doesn't return wrong products, like in this example, where it returns bras when someone actually searched for t-shirts. Handling keyword variations for external search engines is a bit more complicated. Commercial search engines like Google and Yahoo need to understand and connect keyword variations with the right content on your website. In the past, you would have created individual pages to target keyword variations or a group of keyword variations. However, Google shifted to ranking topics instead of individual keywords. Therefore, it's important that your pages include the searched keyword and semantically related words, for example, synonyms or plurals. Just make sure you're not overdoing it. Including all 20, 30, or 50 possible variations of a keyword on a single page is spammy. So here are some ideas for you to consider. Target the most common variations in the title or description. You can see how Gap targets keyword variations in the description, while Sears uses the title tag to target the same. Use product and category descriptions. One option is to use category or product description sections to add keyword variations in the copy. The bottom of this image highlights how this website uses 2 keyword variations for t-shirts. This retailer uses the word tees and t-shirts in the category description copy in order to capture traffic for those keyword variations. Take advantage of related searches. This approach requires displaying a related searches section on your pages. This section may contain several of the most used keyword variations. Keep in mind that related searches sections should be useful for users in the first place and only then for search engine bots. SEO can help identifying possible information architecture problems. You can perform the site query on Google to see whether search engines list the right page at the top. You can also use products and subcategories in the site query. If what you deem to be the most relevant page doesn't show up at the top of the results, various reasons are possible, such as improper internal linking when the internal linking architecture doesn't support the correct page, thin content, no content, or inaccessible content on the right page, external links pointing to the wrong pages, or it can be caused by page-specific penalties. Of course, an in-depth analysis is required to identify the cause of these issues. When attempting to determine the cause of such problems, it's important to understand how the targeted page is linked internally from other pages on your website and from external sites. One of the tools for analyzing this is Google Search Console. As you can see in this screenshot from the console, the internal links report will display the most important internal links, but only for the most important pages on the website. This report is basic, but it can provide some immediate insights. Look for signals such as, are there more internal links to the wrong pages than to the desired page? Is the desired page linked from the parent pages? Is the desired page linked from pages with high authority? Is the desired page linked with the proper anchor text? If there are issues like the ones I just mentioned, it's time to restructure some internal linking. Keep in mind that Google won't allow you to download the complete list of links, just the top ones. Another good method to assess the internal linking is to run a crawl on your website using tools like Xenu or Screaming Frog and export the results in Excel to play with. It is also a good idea to run the most important terms on your internal site search to check whether there is a match between the URL returned by your internal site search and the URL returned by search engines. For instance, let's say that Google returns the gourmet products category listing URL first when you search for site Costco.ca gourmet products. If you were to click on this result, the gourmet product page opens up. In this example, we can see Costco's organic search landing page pointing visitors to the right category page. However, Costco's internal site search returns a different page, which is actually a search results page. This is not the best approach from a usability point of view or even for search engines, because Google doesn't want to list in SERPs other results pages. In Costco's case, this mismatch may happen because of the setup of the internal site search rules. In many cases, when there's an exact match between a user's query and a category name, it's preferable to redirect the user to the listing page instead of to a search results page. Labeling in reference to choosing the names of the links in the navigation is an area where information architecture and search engine optimization overlap. SEOs and information architects have to understand the user's mental model to properly label the navigation. Labeling is not easy and presents a real challenge for very large e-commerce websites. Research from eBay, linked at the bottom of this slide, shows how complex it can get. While most e-commerce taxonomies can be architected based on a predefined vocabulary, SEO can assist in the labeling process. Let's say you sell toys. Start by searching for the category name using AdWords Keyword Planner. When you do so, don't forget to set up the targeting options based on your target market. Download the list generated by Keyword Planner and open it up with Excel. Then categorize keywords into buckets by mapping each keyword to either its category, attribute, or filter name. Then insert a pivot table that counts the occurrences of category. If you sort by count of category, you can get an idea of what needs to be present in the navigation, or you can identify filters that you can use in the faceted navigation. Some navigation labels will be easy to identify after tagging fewer than 100 keywords. For instance, in our example, it seems clear that brand should be a primary or secondary navigation label, and users should be able to navigate and to filter items by brands. Other possible candidates in this example are age, theme, and character. Take the findings from this type of research and discuss them with the information architect. Another thing you should do with the keyword list generated by Keyword Planner is to get the individual word frequency using tools such as Wordle.net. This will provide some interesting insights into which words your target market uses the most when searching for toys. Visually, this is how the word frequency will look like for our previous example. This image is what we call the word cloud, and in our particular example, I excluded the words toys and toy to make the other words stand out. The frequency of the word kids is particularly interesting in this example. If you sell only toys for kids, then you probably should exclude the word kids from your analysis. If you're in this niche, you may notice that a few important segments or labels are missing from this keyword list. One is the gender label. Is your target market price sensitive? Then pricing might be another segmentation or another label. These are insights that can't be discovered using keyword tools. So, how do you identify these hidden labels? By conducting user research and testing, gathering data about your users, and creating consumers' personas and scenarios, user flows, website maps, and wireframes. Labeling doesn't stop with the text used for links and navigation. There are different types of labels as well, such as document labels, where we have URLs or file names, and content labels, for example, page titles. Page titles should make sense to searchers and to search engines. When there's a partial match between the keywords in the HTML title element and the search query, search engines will emphasize. They will bold the matched keywords, which may help with click-through rates. Another type of content labels is headings and subheadings. Headings usually use large fonts and attract the eyes almost immediately. Putting keywords in headings assures users that they are in the right place. Other types of navigation labels include breadcrumbs and contextual text links. Since search engines became so popular, home pages are not the only entry points to websites. Use breadcrumbs to easily and quickly communicate the hierarchy of your website to users. Using keyword-rich anchor text placed in a sentence or paragraph is one of the best ways to interlink pages, either vertically or horizontally. Footers are another type of navigational labels. A quick note on this type of navigation. This is probably the place people spam the most by creating tens of keyword-rich internal links. This screenshot depicts a footer that makes this website a good candidate for an over-optimization penalty. This footer is mainly boilerplate text, meaning that search engines will most likely ignore it when assessing this page's content and the anchor text relevance. It doesn't really help to repeat men's jeans across a million pages, since search engines can exclude boilerplate text pretty well when computing relevance. This screenshot is an excerpt from Google Webmaster's Guidelines. It's funny how SEOs refer to the concepts discussed before as on-page SEO factors, while information architects refer to the same as labels. It seems to me that SEOs and information architects work with similar and related concepts, but they still can't easily come to agreements when it comes to optimizing websites for both searchers and search engines. SEO can help information architects with canonicalizing poly hierarchies. Very often, multiple suitable hierarchies could be appropriate for a given item. It's important to help the information architect choose the best fit as the canonical hierarchy and stick to it. From your primary or secondary navigation, you should link only to the canonical hierarchies. Ideally, all links on the website should point to only one canonical hierarchy. You can keep as many logical hierarchies as are useful to users, but to avoid confusing search engines, link to the canonical hierarchy as well. For example, the Elmo category can be found under Toys, Stuffed Animals, and then Elmo. But it also can be found under Gifts, Holidays, Christmas, and then Elmo. If you decide that the first hierarchy is the canonical one, then whenever you link internally to the Elmo category, use the URL mysite.com/toys/stuffedanimal/Elmo. You can also use your web analytics tool to see how most users reached a particular page. For example, take a look at the navigation summary report generated using Google Analytics and see how many people reached the Elmo page. To get this report, follow the steps illustrated in this screenshot. Additionally, you can take a look at the refined keywords dimension in the Behavior and then Search Terms section to understand what keyword refinements were made after a search for Elmo. Remember that there is no wrong or right way to classify a product into certain taxonomies, as long as you refine them over time if need be. However, once you decided on a canonical hierarchy, it's a good idea to set that in stone. Here are some other tips for e-commerce information architecture. If you use Google Analytics or any other web analysis tool, activate the site search tracking option. Take a look at what users search for and use that information to decide on the website hierarchy. However, don't rely solely on your web analytics data because you'll miss a lot of data that is sourced outside your website. Use keyword research tools to identify keyword variations and suggestions for the terms you have in mind, or for those generated with user research and cart sorting. Analyze your competitors' websites' architecture and navigation, but don't copy blindly. Use this information for inspiration, but create your own site architecture in the end. Use a crawler on your competitors' websites and sort their URLs alphabetically. You may need to crawl a large number of URLs for this to work. Find your competitors' sitemaps, both the HTML sitemap and the XML sitemap, and analyze them in Excel. Download the Demos taxonomy and look at the shopping categorization. When choosing category names, use Google Trends to check whether there's a steep drop in what people search online over time. In this image, notice how the interest in digital cameras trends downwards. Maybe this has to do with mobile phones that yield increasingly better pictures. Don't create the website hierarchy solely on keyword research data. Validate with cart sorting and user interviews. Nowadays, you can easily do that online, so you have no excuses not to. Perform simple navigational queries like contact and your brand name, and make sure the contact URLs and all other important URLs are user-friendly. If you're looking at this image, this is a not-so-friendly contact us URL. Remember, labeling applies to URLs too, not only to links. In this example, the URL is not optimized for users, nor for search engines. This may be limited by your content management system, in which case it may be the time to ditch the old CMS for a new one. A friendly URL will read like this. If you need to categorize large volumes of items, you can use the power of folksonomy, which is an academic term for what we commonly call crowdsourcing. Services such as mTurk from Amazon will allow you to quickly categorize products using real people. However, you need to be careful in how you select participants and what instructions you give them. When you remove or update categories and subcategories from your website, make sure that the URLs belonging to the updated or removed categories redirect to the most appropriate working page. When you develop or update the website, create a checklist of SEO requirements for the information architect. For example, directory and file name conventions, canonicalization rules, lowercasing all URLs, data quality rules for data input teams, seasonality and expired content handling, parameters handling, and so on. I won't provide an extensive checklist here because people tend to limit to using just the pointers in the list while missing others. After attending this course, you should be able to come up with your own list. Send email alerts to the search engine optimizer when someone removes or updates categories, subcategories, and products so that he or she can check the header responses for the new and old URLs. This task can be easily automated. Technical architecture. At the beginning of this section, I mentioned that site architecture is made of information architecture and technical architecture. We then looked at several information architecture topics. Now it's time to discuss technical architecture. While duplicate content and crawlability issues are well-known SEO headaches, many search engine optimizers categorize them under the information architecture umbrella. But they are, in fact, technical issues. Most of the SEO tips you will learn during the next chapters are addressing technical architecture issues. But before jumping into pure SEO stuff, let's continue with another pillar of search engine optimization, keyword research.